The stream is live. Look at that.
We'll see. Sorry, guys. Jump on. We were just chit-chatting away. I was trying to catch up on some stuff. Let us know where you're at from, where you guys are calling in from. Pretty please, with sugar on top. Again, I can only see Facebook. They haven't started streaming in yet. Hopefully. Seeing folks on there? Okay.
On and on Substack.
Hey, guys. You calling in for Stephanie from the Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Right on. Okay. Toronto Chili Bee, we know you. I still don't see anybody from Facebook yet.
Let's see what's going on there. There. Yeah, we've got 6.
Okay.
7. Again, I didn't think I might have forgot that this is an event on Facebook, but I don't think I put it in your feed.
Oh, you don't do that?
In a day. Well, no, it'll show up for everyone
Oh.
if you're on live.
Okay. They're coming in there now. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Kimberly. Hi, Sharon again. Hey, Nina. Always jumping in from Missouri. Appreciate you. We have Charles Lister with us tonight, everybody. You guys know my favorite comedian, cartoonist, former actor, set designer, and generally handsome fellow in his man cave in Lexington, Kentucky.
Jeff, you're making me blush.
Yeah, well, it's just, I think it's rosacea.
Yeah, probably is. It's all the drink. Yeah.
It's the scotch, buddy.
Yeah.
It's the scotch. Yeah. So we learned in the last couple of days that apparently, even though the Pentagon was telling us that this war in Iran was costing us $1 billion a day, actually, when I was covering conflicts about, with the Iraq and Afghanistan war, we were looking at between $2 and $4 billion a day, and that was years ago. So their $1 billion a day price tag is way, way off. But that's what they're saying. And Pete Hegseth has been saying that the Democrats are the reckless naysayers and don't know what they're talking about. We're still in a situation where we have no idea where this war is going. I was wondering if you, my friend, have any idea where you think this war is going. I get a feeling you're ready to wind up on this one.
I think it's going to hell in a handbasket, just about as quick as it can, about as hard and fast as anybody can arrange it. It's a complete mess. I mean, I think it was ill-advised to go in there to begin with. I think they've stirred up a hornet's nest, and I don't think there's any sort of plan. But, I mean, we've seen this before out of this president. This is his MO. This is what he likes to do. He likes to stir up a lot of chaos and see where the chips fall, And this time, it may have really cost him, and it may have cost us all. It's already certainly cost Southeast Asia. There's rationing going on. They're canceling flights in Europe. Some of the last tankers are finally arriving, and it's beginning to dawn on folks that tankers are not behind them. And, this war has knocked out several refineries. Even if they did open the Strait of Hormuz tomorrow, they're not going to be able to get those refineries online for another 6 months to a year. I mean, and the whole world is recalibrating for that. My understanding is that China and Southeast Asian people are looking closely at Canada to try and get oil out of there, to offset the losses out of the Middle East. And the world's going to be a very different place from a standpoint of the energy sector on the other side of this. This is a big deal,
Let's see. Why is your leader such a douche? From Hamilton, Ontario. Always, I think Brent.
He's not Canadian.
I think Brent. It's not. What'd you say?
Because he's not Canadian.
Yeah. I think Brent is chiming in as if he's been just back from the hockey rink. my kind of guy. No, I think we're looking at the price of Brent crude right now. It's trading right now currently between 110 and $112 a barrel, and that's not going to get better anytime
That's going
soon.
to head north. That's
Yeah.
not gonna go down, and that's going to have knock-on effects all across the economy. Everything from tennis shoes to plastic wrap. And people forget oil isn't the only thing that's coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. I read one time 35% of the world's aluminum comes out of there. Something like 15% of the world's helium. Helium is absolutely essential in processing advanced manufacturing process for chips. In your cell phone. So I think we can all look forward to cell phones becoming considerably more expensive over the next few
And we've got
years.
fertilizer that comes through there too as well.
Is what?
Fertilizer that comes through there.
Oh God, yes, yeah. The LNG gas is important for fixing nitrogen in fertilizer, and the people who are most dependent on that is Asia, Indonesia, countries like that. And there's all kinds of conversations going on down there about rice harvesting. It's going to get really bad for those countries.
Yeah.
People are going to get hungry. And okay, so the Iranians are still claiming that they're in a shooting war and they're taking pot shots at ships coming in and out. Donald Trump is claiming that we've got this airtight blockade set up, and the administration is claiming that this blockade is actually keeping ships from getting to the Iranians to resupply them, to bring them money, and that it's causing them a great deal of consternation. And then the idea is who's going to suffer the most pain and who's going to blink first. And if you listen to the cheerleaders, from Pete Hegseth to Stephen Miller, it's like we've got them right where we want them. But if you listen to the Iranians, they're singing the same tune. So we're going to find out, over the next few months. We're going to find out.
It seems like Pete Hegseth in the last couple of days has had, they're in Congress trying to get more money. They want a 40% increase in the defense budget, but yet he seems unwilling to actually sit there and answer basic questions. It seems like Pam Bondi has grown wings in the sense that, Pete is answering questions the exact same way that she normally would. Somebody asks a question, how much do you think this is going to cost? And he says, oh, that's a gotcha question.
Right.
When just have some perspective for our viewers here. When somebody asks how much something's going to cost, they're trying to figure out how much it costs, because things cost a lot of money. And we're trying to figure out, Congress's job is oversight, and Congress's job is to decide whether we can afford the things that we're asking about. And so when they say
we're not trying to trip you up here, Pete. We're gonna need a little information from you.
Can you guys imagine if you went to a contractor who was building a house and you said, well, this all sounds great. I'd love to see your plans. They're a little wishy-washy, but anyways, regardless, forget about the plans suck. But look, can you just tell me how much you think the house is going to cost me? And he said, watch
him get it indignant. Well, that's an outrage.
Yeah.
How dare you question me? I mean, that's what is this? A got you question? What are you trying to pin me down to something here? Clearly you don't understand how this shit works. I'm the contractor. Don't you understand? Don't you see? Jesus Christ. Yeah, to watch these guys bluff like that and bluster and everything.
But it's everything too. It's on every question almost. He's got
every single question.
Arrogant answer. The guy, you can see why he only made the rank of major and why he never had a company command as a captain.
Yeah, I can. I got a friend of mine who refers to him as Keg's breath, which I think is pretty fun. I've heard that slur, but yeah, he's, I'm not real impressed. I mean, again, look, it's a war. One of the things that I think is going on is, with the on again, off again, you've got to really ask yourself, if the Israeli intelligence forces went in there and were just killing people willy-nilly in the beginning, and then we were targeting people based on their intelligence from the Ayatollah on down, who's left in charge? And who's really got command and control of the whole country? Do you have situations where you've got like like colonels who have small missile batteries in one section of the country that are not talking to other groups in sections of Iran. I mean, are they even negotiating in Pakistan with people who have total control over the region?
I think they're negotiating with politicians, and I think the most important thing, I think this is what you were getting to, which is that politicians negotiating in Islamabad aren't necessarily the people that are necessarily in charge, because you've got the Republican Guard that has a lot of sway over the country, and they're not readily.
I'm imagining guys, ambitious colonels, who have access to a lot of military equipment and have a lot of fanatics underneath them who are more than willing to drive down to the beach and pop off drones and rounds at tankers going through. And they're not even in communication with the politicians who are ostensibly negotiating with Americans. I mean, I would imagine it's pretty chaotic,
I do think it's interesting that we have a blockade on their blockade. And somehow we think that that's an answer to our oil crisis that is continuing to emerge. When they have a blockade and they're charging fees to go through, and it eliminates still 90% of the people going through, and we say, well, we don't like that, so we're going to blockade the other 10% so that you can't bring weapons in and out. You basically have 100% blockade.
And I had that same question. And one of the things that like I was trying to. I'm like, well, what is their pushback to that? What is their position on that? And they're saying that, okay, yes, they were keeping shipping that they didn't want to go out of the Strait of Hormuz, but they were allowing shipping to come in to certain Iranian ports, resupply shipping from China for munitions. Apparently the Republican Guard is also involved with a lot of covert drug activity that helps fund their operations, and that has just been completely shut down. And the administration is claiming that is causing real problems for them, that they can't pay their thugs, that they can't pay their people. And so, but is that true? How would we know?
Yeah. I think that what concerns me the most is that they want to continue. Now, I guess the War Powers Act would have to go into effect as early as tomorrow if we're going to follow the law. And what do you want to place any bets? Okay. You want to place any bets as to whether he's going to follow the law tomorrow morning?
No, I don't see that happening.
No takers, huh?
No, no. But I mean, God, I'd have to do a deep dive on the history, but how many times has that been ignored?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that Donald Trump's malfeasance doesn't come out of nowhere. There's sometimes a lot of precedence for the kind of shenanigans that he pulls. There's oh man, and we're a long way from the world that we were in when on December 7th we declared a war and went to war. And we've just been playing these little proxy wars. And the thing that's strange to me, Jeff, is that was his whole selling point to his base. Hey, listen, I'm done with that kind of nonsense. Now there is a divide in the Republican Party right now. I mean, it is becoming factionalized. There are people that are very upset about what he's doing on the Republican side. He's got obviously his hardcore supporters, but there are detractors. And I think we're going to find out comes November, what kind of price he pays.
Well, that's interesting because that leads us to the obvious next point, which is the Supreme Court overruling, or the ruling in the Supreme Court to allow the redrawing of maps without taking into consideration racial divisions within areas on that map, which is going to set off the whole new. I mean, I think you and I probably would agree on this. We haven't talked about it yet, but this is going to set off a firestorm of states running to redraw their maps at a time when we're just months away from, we're just some states are even going to push back their primaries because they want to.
My understanding is here in Kentucky, it's not going to happen in this election cycle, but here's something to think about in the state of Kentucky. When you look at the federal delegation that goes to Congress, you got your 2 senators and I think you got 6 congressmen in Kentucky. There is only 1 Democrat in the entire federal delegation from the state of Kentucky. And that's a guy named McGarvey that's up in Louisville, Kentucky. And this redistricting thing, it's going to destroy him. And so
Yeah, they'll write him out of it.
yeah, they'll write him out. So at that point, the Democrat or the Republicans will basically effectively control the entire state, top to bottom, and will have carte blanche to do whatever they want. I mean, he's
this
the
is what
last.
we
He's
talked
the
about.
last standing.
I think we talked about this last week, which was, the problem with all this gerrymandering is that we need a national policy, a national law that stops gerrymandering from happening. We should have a model that's more like the state of Virginia, where you have a bipartisan commission look at maps that have both Republicans and Democrats from the state legislature, as well as an equal number, as well as civilians on that, drawing maps that everybody can sort of agree that are fair. And
that sounds great.
We need a
that
national. Well,
reasonable.
The Democrats have been asking for it for a number of years, and even I know you think AOC is pretty far left, but she has been calling for this for a long time as well. It's not something that's likely to be done, but nonetheless, it's the only solution to the problem we face now, because with the Voting Rights Act completely just demolished by this latest ruling, and that's not my words, that's Sotomayor's words. That's liberals on the Supreme Court who stated that. And that's a problem, because now we've taken the issues and policy questions off the table. It's no longer in any state going to be about whether we have the right policy in place or not, or the right policy that we're pursuing to fix things that are in our country. It is always going to be now a power play for what maps can be drawn and how you can win by having your state's maps push out other states' maps. So California's already moved in that direction. They say they're going to maybe potentially redraw their maps for this. I think they have 52 seats in California. Yep. And to balance out some of these states like Florida that are going at it now, they're going to have to gerrymander. And it's just like, that's just so fucked up. How can any American think this is a way to have a democracy?
Well, I don't know. But one of the things that I do know, that I'm in a country that has a long tradition of not being particularly interested in democracy. If you go all the way back to the founding fathers, they were interested in a republic, and they were terrified of direct control of the masses. I mean, that not only did they not want indigenous peoples, slaves, and women to vote, but if you look at day one, they didn't want men who didn't own property to vote. I mean, you start scratching your head and you're going, well, who could vote? And they were all kind of the guys that were in that room in Philadelphia that day. They were the
plantation owners.
Yeah. But their argument was, that a massive amount of enfranchisement, would be destabilizing, and certainly back then I can see that argument, educational levels being without, you were talking about a time back then when only probably about 6% of the population was literate, but we're well past that. And the idea of disenfranchising people is not great, and it certainly breeds a lot of political unrest.
You talked about how they believe that franchising people would destabilize, but the opposite is what we're about to have, which is disenfranchising people.
Absolutely, especially now when you have an educated populace and people who are engaged in the political process on the level that they are. I mean, the last two election cycles, my understanding is more Americans voted in the last two election cycles than have ever voted ever before. So people are engaged. They're paying attention. It's not like it was, just 20 years ago or 30 years ago when things were kind of settled. There wasn't such a hair bit of difference between the two political parties. I mean, if you go back to the 1990s when Clinton and Bush were running the show, I mean, when it came to social issues like whether or not we're going to have display the flag, or say the Pledge of Allegiance, there was a big divide. But when it came to foreign policy and when it came to economic policy, there wasn't a dime's worth of difference between the two political.
That's right. The Russians were bad.
Yeah,
we all knew that.
Bad. Yeah, and
the Chinese, we didn't
we're not
really
in that world anymore. We're not in that world anymore. We
actually have two political parties that have different views on whether Russians.
The Clinton-Bush edifice that held sway for so many years. I would say going all the way back to Reagan in 1980, and ending, with the election of Barack Obama in 2008. I mean, for almost 30 years, that was a consensus, amongst the elites and amongst the establishment. And that consensus is the thing that where you're seeing this populist anger come from. I can only speak to, what's going on here in Kentucky. When I talk to people who can articulate the point of view, it's well, that 30 years didn't do good things for people in the Midwest. It didn't do good things for people in the Southeast. The globalization, the outsourcing of everything, that sort of thing. It didn't work out well for Main Street USA, and of course you get this massive upheaval and this reaction with two populist candidates. Starting with Barack Obama and then Donald J. Trump, and we're in a different world now. We're in a much more isolationist point of view. Those are the people who hold sway now.
What's interesting about that, Charles, is that the people who wanted globalization were Republicans. The Republicans wanted globalization. Right. They wanted cheaper labor in places like China, Vietnam, right, and et al. And as a result, they got exactly what they wanted, and now they're the ones claiming the Democrats created the problem.
But Jeff, I will say this: if you talk to people who remember that time period, they will tell you that Republicans didn't want that; neoconservatives wanted that, and liberals, progressive liberals in the American Southeast will tell you no liberal wanted that. They didn't want everything outsourced. No, who wanted that were neoliberals like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. And there was not a dime's worth of difference between the neoliberals and the neocons. They were on the same page. They wanted us involved in foreign wars. They wanted to outsource every job that they could. They wanted to enrich people in the urban areas at the expense of people in the rural areas. And where I'm living here in Kentucky, that is the perception of what went on during that time. And that is why they are so vehemently in support of Donald Trump, in much the same way that a lot of liberals support the further left-leaning candidates, the AOCs, that sort of thing. It's a reaction to that long 25, 30-year period where everything got outsourced and the entire infrastructure got hollowed out. And then on top of it, we were involved in endless wars, overseas that nobody understood the reason for.
Yeah. So let me switch gears a little bit and ask you your thoughts on the royal family visit, because I know how you love kings and monarchy.
I actually drew
you're a pipe-smoking Scotch drinker, so most people would think that you love the royal family.
No. I think they're straight out of the fucking trailer park. I love how they, I swear to God, man, it's like watching a reality show whenever you tune into something about that family. They make my skin crawl. They literally, well, first of all, they're not English. The whole Windsor family are a bunch of Germans, and at least one of them was literally a Nazi.
He abdicated, Charles. He abdicated.
I know, Jeff. But man, if you're ever feeling too cheerful about life, you should look at when they declassified those communiques between him and
I've read them. Yeah.
Oh my God, what a monster that little son of a bitch was. So yeah, I think they're icky and sleazy, and awful, and
but what do you think his real purpose for coming here was? I mean, first of all, let me just set this up. I mean, we're at a time where the most volatile potential loss of allies in Europe in the history of our lifetime, because of Trump's policies and attitude and the way he talks about them. And it's the biggest time that I've noted since he's ever been in office where the rest of the world has wanted to say directly to him, go fuck yourself. Mm-hmm. And so now you have the go fuck yourself Europe, and Britain is a part of that, even though they Brexited their way out of it. And so he's really at a weird time because it's not too many months ago that his own brother got caught up in the had his sausage in the cookie jar, so to speak. And
Sure.
and really and England has taken, and UK has taken dramatic measures against him, not to put him in jail, but certainly to ruin the rest of his life purposefully. And his own brother did it.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's coming over here at that time with that sort of monkey on his back, so to speak. And and then the first thing that people start reporting is that he would not meet with the Epstein victims. And so he's got that. As soon as he hits the ground running and there's red carpets under his feet, the Epstein victims are rightfully saying, well, he won't meet with us. So what do you take away from, why he came, what he hoped to accomplish? I mean, there's a couple of things that seem obvious on the reporting, but what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's an attempt by the British establishment to try and put the best foot forward, because I mean, they may be furious with Donald Trump, but they understand that it was the alliance with NATO that has largely kept them from being the smallest fucking province in Western Russia for the last 80 years, and they need us, they need us. They don't just need us from a standpoint of a security guarantee. They also need us economically. There's no question about that. I mean, they're a small island. They don't have a lot of natural resources. So, they're going to trot him out. He's going to come over with it, and he's going to talk about our special relationship, et cetera, and try to shore up fences and mend fences and try to make sure that, that we can continue to help them both militarily and economically.
Who do you think he's trying to make sense?
I think so.
Is it directly with the Trump administration, or is it with Congress, to send a message to Congress that, hey, we're still here with you and we still care about you? Yeah, and he also made some pretty interesting comments about, that we're both going to be hosting the FIFA World Cup soon, as king of Canada, essentially saying, look, they're a Commonwealth country and I'm still representative of Canada. The monarchy represents Canada in a symbolic way. And you being, King Trump, he made comments of that, which I thought were very telling, basically, because all the 51st state bullshit.
The whole thing it made me laugh so much. Like I say, I actually got inspired this week, and I did another cartoon which I sent to you.
Where, I'll put it up here.
Where you guys, where King Charles is addressing Congress. And, I've got him basically saying, look, it's been a real pleasure to be in a chamber that's so rich with tradition, where political power has been reduced to the performative and the symbolic. It seems that the English monarchy and the American Congress have a great deal in common. I mean, because, at the end of the day, he's not particularly a political figure. He has no actual power. And one of the things that has been a hallmark of the Trump administration is the neutering of Congress. I mean, Congress has been completely ineffectual, but that's been a trend that's been, I would argue, has been ongoing since going all the way back to Nixon, is the strengthening of the executive branch. My hope is that in time that Congress will begin to reassert itself, that people will realize the checks and balance nature of that section of government. And we'll see more activity there to curb in what I see is the excesses of the executive branch. And look, Jeff, those excesses, they've come from Democrats and Republicans over the last 50 years. Donald Trump with his, he's not the only one who's executive order happy. Other presidents have done it as well. Taken us to war again and again and again without any kind of congressional authorization, and it's people are sick of it. People are just absolutely sick of it. There's a place where you can find common ground with almost anybody. Everybody's had it with that. And, I think the answer to that, look, people get so excited about the presidential election. People turn out and vote for presidential elections. They don't vote in they don't vote in the off-year elections. The people who vote that skew demographically higher and older, and the engagement drops off sharply. But there's tremendous political power to be had there.
And I think that's what you're seeing them all frantically on both sides of the aisle right now, trying to figure out how the fuck they're going to save their party in November. I mean, this is serious business. Until this ruling the other day, we at least had an idea, a ballpark idea of where it was going to shake out. Mm-hmm. We knew, Virginia was probably going to have a Supreme Court decision that was maybe going to be in favor of it. Florida was going to flip some seats, and everything else was kind of shaped out. But now with this Supreme Court ruling, it's a free for all in every state, and everybody's going to be calling like special sessions, and you know what I mean? It's going to be insane, and it's never
a lot of chaos
in our lifetime been this way. So really, to me, what matters the most is that, or not matters the most, but what is noteworthy to me is that everything around this fucking guy is chaos. Mm-hmm. Everything. Mm-hmm. There is nothing that he does that's not chaotic.
That's right.
And I think I talked about this a lot with you guys who are listening in, how this was going to be this way. And the closer we got to the election, the more chaos there would be. We don't know what all the chaos is going to be. This was just one chaotic thing that's setting off an entire country's panic. And that was just one decision because he had the ability to appoint this court. And this is nothing close to what it's going to be in the next several months. This is going to be a state of chaos. It's unending until the November elections. In fact, it's not going to end at the November elections because they will sue every state where he loses.
Right.
Over some nonsense. It'll be like the seashell stuff. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right.
Right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about James Comey. Look, I try to keep things objective. James Comey
this fucking guy takes a picture of a bunch of rocks on a beach, and they
shells. Let's be clear.
Rock, whatever.
Shells are just as dangerous as rocks.
Sakes, and all of a sudden the Justice Department is indicting him over it. I mean, I'm sitting there reading that, and I can't even believe what I'm reading. It's insane, and it's so undermining to the institutions. When the American people sit back and watch these, the Justice Department and these federal institutions become instruments of lawfare, where factions are going after each other. It's awful, So but that's where we're at.
I think what bothers me the most is that it's all this is supremely laughable, and I'm quite certain that I'm not quite certain, but I'm 90% certain that if there is a reasonable judge in the world in North Carolina who hears this case, it'll be thrown out on like pretty fucking quickly.
Oh, I'd stake my life on that bet.
It's preposterous.
It's preposterous.
But let's just really reflect on what this means. To me, it is a nonstop effort by the Justice Department, to prosecute anybody. And first of all, let's just talk about James Comey. He's no hero. I like him more now than I did in 2016. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a guy who, if you thought elections shouldn't be tinkered with now, he was the head tinker in the last election.
Oh God. Well, and also back during the Bush administration. Let's see, the cozy revolving door. Hey, let's get you a job over at Lockheed Martin so you can make your millions, and everything like that. I mean, he's. God damn, everything that should be something admirable and a public servant. I mean, you read 3 lines into their bio and you realize they're just so smarmy. It's sad. I mean, it's all just a free for all of self-interest, and you start wondering what happened to public servants, what happened to people who wanted to go up there and make a difference and stuff like that, and it's just
the one thing we can say about James Comey is that he was a career, here's a guy in law enforcement who knew what law enforcement was. I agree. He was a Republican, and he did a Republican thing in the last, in the 2016 election. And that Republican thing was that probably cost Hillary the election. But fine. That's the way that, it played itself out. That's the way life goes. I don't think in the end he thought that was such a good thing that he did. And I think that he's turned in a way that's like, okay, this is my chance for mea culpa. I'm going to go hard on Trump any chance I can right now. And that has made him a target of the Trump administration.
You bet.
And as a result of that, and Trump has more than delivered on his promise to get rid of Comey. And now we have a James Comey and a Donald Trump who are infighting, and Trump has all the power. And so he has taken like I said on my reel yesterday, if this guy was such a threat to the president, he wouldn't have been investigated for a year without being in prison or jail. Sure. He would not have been released by a judge yesterday when he came and turned himself in.
I looked up James Comey's net worth, right? He's worth about 17, 18 million bucks. His years serving at Lockheed Martin, his speaking fees, he's written a book, et cetera, et cetera. But, if you think about the kind of money he's going to have to pull together to defend himself from a federal investigation, I mean, this is going to take a 6-figure bite out of his ass.
I think what's going to happen is, and if it's not, I think it probably is happening already, but I think one of those big firms in DC is going to, represent him.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
And I think they're going to do it for nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have, in fact, I have some friends who work at some of those firms, and they've taken up similar cases. And I think but still, it's, how is it on his career? The fact that he's going to have to go back and forth to North Carolina all the time, they might. It's going to be stupid. And that's the point of it. The point of it is if you're really powerful, he'll attack you. Mm-hmm. And that makes the less than powerful people feel like they're scared.
That's exactly right.
And that's the point of it. It's misery. Create as much misery as possible. I don't care if it gets thrown out. Indict him again. Indict him on something else.
Yep.
And that's the point. The point of it is
slowly grind the person down. Grind them down. Just grind them down.
And in the meantime, we have a guy who, the other day, and we've talked about this on my previous stuff, who unless you're a crazy person, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend any of my viewers, but unless you're a crazy person, that the guy who was going in the other day was trying to get in there and kill some people. He seemed very reasonable when you looked at his 2-page letter to his family and friends. He did. He came off sounding like a kind of a normal guy who's just frustrated with the world we're in. But make no doubt about it. People who do that are crazy. They are, they're not sane, and we shouldn't treat them as such. But nonetheless, he came in and he played that move, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is a staged event." It's not a fucking staged event, but it is an opportunity once again for Trump to push one of his agenda pieces of,
Sure.
And so he tears down. I love the briefings. I read the briefings and had a reel on it the other day. They literally use the word, Todd Blanche, who's another one of my targets, has used the word Trump derangement syndrome in a brief filed in U.S. federal court to suggest that people that are filing a lawsuit against the ballroom have Trump derangement syndrome. And that is not a medical thing, but they're using those terms. A fucking attorney general of the United States is using those terms. And he's using all capital letters.
Right. You're telling me this, right? I didn't see
all capital letters when he's trying to scream at the judge because he thinks the judge is not making a quick enough decision and throwing it out. And it's just preposterous. He called the guy's letter to his family and friends, I think it was something like a far-reaching or overreaching manifesto, and it was like a page and 3/4. This is not Ted Kaczynski's manifesto that we all remember. Right?
Yeah, right.
That was a manifesto, and that was really unhinged. This guy's just writing about why he was doing what he was doing, and nobody thinks it's smart that he was doing what he was doing.
This is tangential here, but you're actually talking to somebody who read Ted Kaczynski's manifesto.
Tell me about it.
I read all it. Well, first of all, it was like 98 pages long. And I'll tell you something. It was absolutely fucking fascinating. It was one of the most erudite, airtight, fascinating things I've ever read. He walked you through a case against the corporate techno edifice that we all feel we're being pinched by from the time. And he came up with these arguments. He talked about how the unholy alliance between large corporate interests and the government work together to just absolutely crush any American anywhere. He talked about how it has no compassion, no feeling whatsoever. He said at one point in the manifesto, he said, if tomorrow the techno edifice had a Faustian bargain where it's like, hey, we could do a technological innovation that would grow the economy by 20%, but it would kill 50,000 Americans. Kaczynski goes, now you would go, well, then nobody would go for that. And then he talked about the Interstate Highway Act. And he talked about how in the 1950s, when Congress passed the Interstate Highway Act, they said this will grow the U.S. economy exponentially. But they had done all of this research to show that cars traveling at that rate of speed would cost the American people 50,000 lives a year. And they went ahead and went with it, and so you're reading all this, and the logic is just fantastic. It was incredible. And then it gets right up to the end, Jeff, and this is the best part, where Ted Kaczynski comes in with his prescription for what needs to be done, because you're sitting there and he's really convincing you. You're going, Jesus Christ, this guy's right.
You're teaching at Harvard, right?
Yeah. And he gets to the end and he goes, so my solution is very simple. We need to kill every one of these motherfuckers. It's like the whole thing just goes right out the goddamn window. And that's when all of a sudden it's just like the mask drops and you reveal, just how batshit crazy the poor man was. Yeah. I mean, he was outside.
I wasn't living in a shack in the mountains. This guy was living in broad daylight with family and friends and a regular Christian churchgoer for most of his life.
Yep. Well, listen, crazy's often right in front of you.
Yeah. So here we have back to my original point, which is that what's happening right now is Todd Blanche, these selective prosecutions. So you're spending time, literally a 15-page brief, arguing that the assassination attempt on the president should force the court to drop the lawsuit that's filed so that they can build a ballroom that will then be many layers underground to protect the president, because that would have solved the problem. And the funny part is it wouldn't have solved the problem because the White House Correspondents' Dinner has nothing to do with the White House. It's the correspondence. The key words there are correspondence dinner. It happens outside of the White House all the time, every year. And the people who are there from the White House and from Congress are invited guests. So, and it's a 2,800 person event that they would have to stuff in a 1,000-person ballroom in the first place. And Todd Blanche is fighting this fight as well as the James Comey fight, and has refused to look at any more evidence whatsoever or comply with the law that requires him to release the Epstein files in their entirety, with few exceptions. And so they're selective. And I think today he said, when asked about whether they would look at other people who wrote 86-46 as opposed to 86-47, the code they're using for, they think means kill the president of the United States, 46 being Biden, 47 being Trump.
Right.
When asked whether they would prosecute the 87-46 cases with the same vigor that they did James Comey, he basically said, well, every case is different. So what we're seeing is this insane selective prosecution. And we can't force them to follow the law. I've said all along to everybody who's been listening to me from the beginning when I started doing this bullshit, that they have no intent on following any fucking laws unless they win a court case. When they lose a court case, they don't care. He'll solve that with an executive order. And when they win a court case, they'll say the court's made the right decision, like he did on the Voting Act. And so everybody needs to prepare themselves for the fact that they will, including the War Powers Act, you name it, whether it's a tariff. As soon as he was struck down by the tariffs, he jumped on in with another tariff, right? Because it's like there's nothing following this. You're going to make me feel bad about myself, aren't you?
Here's a great solution to all of this.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing this out there as an idea. The Democrats could try and win an election.
Well, how are you going to win an election if they're rigging the fucking votes, bro?
Well, one of the things that you could do is you could, as Democrats, you could talk about things that interest the most people. And I mean, whenever I listen to the Democrats, I'm just like, I can't believe the hills they choose to die on. It's amazing to me. I mean, Democrats should be destroying Republicans right and left. But
the majority of the country think more moderately as a Democratic Party, but I know you have really strong feelings about the far left, and I say that knowing that you are a liberal. And let me just set it up by saying, let me ask you, what do you believe in that the government does? Because some people might listen to you on the wrong day and think you're a conservative.
I believe that the government has a very important role, in thing. I think that the government, I'm not some civil libertarian who thinks that the damn government shouldn't do anything but defend the border. I think there are social programs that the government is behind. There's, the educational system that the government, the public education system, for all of its faults and everything like that. If you look at over the arc of time from the early 20th century to today, I mean, the literacy rates, we have lifted so many people, and made them literate and educated them. I mean, there are so many things that the government can do to help improve the overall situation for its citizens.
Name some of them. I know you have
and that's why I'm a liberal Democrat. I'm a liberal Democrat, but I'm not a progressive. I'm not a leftist. I'm certainly not a democratic socialist. I'm not any of those things. I'm a liberal Democrat, and a liberal Democrat, believes in a role, that the federal government has a role in shaping policy and should do more than just, defend the border, and that sort of thing, but
what democratic sort of government policies do you agree with? You've listed a few of them to me in the past.
well,
What?
like I love the Social Security program. I love disability programs. I love public education. I love, I believe in, everything from, a woman's right to choose to, I mean, just standard liberal policies. But I don't believe in overreach beyond that. I don't believe in centralized control of the economy by the government. I don't. I think that well, like one of the things that's really tearing the country apart is healthcare, and I think that there is a lot to be done there. But I mean, look, in 2008. I enthusiastically got behind Barack Obama because he was running around championing socialized medicine. And imagine my horror after 2 years in office when I discovered that it wasn't socialized medicine he was interested in. He was interested in the largest giveaway to insurance companies in the history of the world with the Affordable Care Act, and he was interested in forcing Americans to buy a product from these sons of bitches who have been screwing us since day one. I mean,
But
I don't know.
You would be for a single payer program, right? Or
Yeah,
socialized
I
medicine.
think I would. I would be for a single payer program, but not one that's all encompassing and drives out completely the private sector. I
Yeah.
don't understand why the two are incompatible. Why can't you have both? Why can't you have private sector healthcare insurance, and why can't you have a single payer system that competes with it, and have those two run side by side? Why does it have to be an either or? I don't think it needs to be. I think that there should be a public option that is viable and is a strong thing, but I don't think that means that we completely destroy private insurance and private healthcare and that sort of thing. I think that the both can work hand in hand. And if you think about it, there's plenty of that going on right now. What's the system, the healthcare that we have for veterans and for soldiers?
Yeah, TRICARE.
Yeah, TRICARE, exactly. Why couldn't we simply expand TRICARE, to the general population and have that run side by side in direct competition with health insurance companies? I mean, and have the two compete against each other. And then that would then drive costs down overall. I mean, that to me seems like an incremental change that you could go down that path without completely overturning the apple cart of the economy. One of the things that you have to remember when you go tinkering with something as big as healthcare, shit, what is healthcare? 20% of the U.S. economy? It's something like that. So you can't just go in there with a sledgehammer. I believe in negotiating with people and making incremental changes over a long period of time. I don't
Yeah,
believe
I
in
would say
quickly.
We had somebody who said on our thing, so you believe in social programs but not socialism. Why don't you maybe explain your position and how it's different?
Yeah, that I really do. Look, social programs are not socialism. Socialism is an insanely managed, centralized control. You know, I've worked in the public sector and I've worked in the private sector, and I've seen the government up close, and it's not pretty. It's not efficient. It's not kind. It's not warm fuzzy. You know, and you know, I understand that the private sector can play rough too. You know, I'm not naive about that. You know, but you know, when you give a tremendous amount of power to the people who have the guns, you know, it's not great. You know, I like a healthy and vibrant private sector, and
Well, we've given a lot of power to the men with the guns right now.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're not socialists. Actually, you could start making an argument they're becoming slowly. I mean, you know, they're trying to they're trying to purchase private airlines and put them under the control of the Trump administration. And that to me is for MAGA, if they don't understand what socialism is, that is socialism.
That's right. Well, it's socialism for the rich.
Yeah.
Is what it is. It's like, hey, I want to have strong centralized government control, and I want that government control to go toward to benefit, instead of benefiting people who are marginalized and in trouble economically, I want it to benefit large corporate interests. You know, so you basically set up a system where you know, you have socialist policies that benefit large corporate interests, and that's a nightmare. You know, it's a damn nightmare. It really is.
What do you think about Pam Bondi's recall to testify in front of Congress on May 27th, I think it is. You know, she's, just to set it up for people who don't keep up with all this stuff, Pam Bondi was scheduled earlier this month to have to testify in front of Congress, and it was originally she was subpoenaed to do so, and then kind of came in, and James Comer, not to be confused with James Comey.
Right.
Comey, excuse me, I almost did it. You know, is a Republican congressman from Kentucky who is in charge of that House committee that's doing a lot of that oversight, House Oversight and Government. What do you call it?
Well, there's two congressmen that are bringing a lot of heat on that. It's James Comer and also Thomas Massie.
Well, James Comer's bringing heat on behalf of Donald Trump, and Thomas Massie's bringing heat against Donald Trump. And they're both Kentucky Republicans.
Massey's my guy. Massey's a really interesting character, man. If you read up on that guy, he attended MIT. He got his master's degree in electrical engineering. He lives off the grid in northern Kentucky on a farm that is run off of a hodgepodge set of Tesla batteries and solar panels that he whipped up together. He owns over 30 patents. You know, I mean, just this really fascinating guy, but he is a civil libertarian down to his socks. And you were asking me earlier this week, you said, what's the deal with this guy, Massey? Why is he flying in the face of Donald Trump and taking this?
That's the cynical side of me as a reporter, because I've lost the ability, Charles, to actually think somebody's doing something for the right reason. I have to go straight to the question of, what political gain is he getting by going against Trump?
And my answer to that, Jeff, is I can't see it. I don't know what it is, because Trump is rolled up in his district throwing money around, you know, like a fucking rock star, because he's backing this Navy SEAL. I can't remember the guy's name that's going to primary Massey to get Massey out of there, you know, and you know, so no, I don't see any political gain. I think Massey just really believes, hey, we should go after these sons of bitches. You know, these were child fuckers. You know, and he's like, it's horrific. You know, and this needs to stop. You know, and so
I would love to believe. I would just love to believe, and I sort of am believing, that Thomas Massie is one of those people that's kind of like a Ben Sass. You know, the former senator from Nebraska. Listen, guys, I'm going to speak to everybody here. If you haven't seen the long version, it's 38 minutes long, of Scott Pelley, my old colleague at 60 Minutes, interviewing former Senator Ben Sass, Ben is dying of cancer. He has 5 kinds of cancer. He hasn't got much time left. And he is one of the most articulate, intelligent, and if you do like Republicans, he is the Republican you would want to follow. He's just he's God-fearing, and I'm agnostic, by the way.
Right.
But he's just really, he holds up to those standards that he considers Christian, which seems to be an anomaly in our society today. But anyways, he's a very smart man, and he has interesting things to say about where the country is going and how we got to where we got to. It's a 38-minute thing. It's on 60 minutes overtime, and it was produced, I think, by a good friend of mine. I don't know if Nicole Young worked on it, but she's a good friend of mine at 60 Minutes, and Scott Pelley, who I did work for when I was there as well. And it's a really, really interesting interview. He's interviewing a dying man who has some of the most wise things to say about our country, our government, and where we are today and where we need to go if we want to fix it. So go watch that. Ben Sass and Scott Pelley, 60 Minutes overtime. It's 38 minutes. It's best 38 minutes you'll watch all week, I promise you. But anyways, Ben Sass kind of reminds me a little bit.
You're talking about this guy Sass. I'm talking about this guy Massey. One of the things that I lament is when you look back over the history of the American Congress, the Congress used to be the place where that kind of idiosyncrasy could manifest. You could have these people who were outliers, and they became a moral voice. They became a conscience. They became, and they had to be contended with, And now what has happened is the world has drifted into such a hyper-partisan place that Congress is just like, well, there's just 2 camps, And so a guy like Massey comes along, and nobody knows what the hell to make of that guy. I mean, they really don't. I find
myself trying to say vote for Massey. He's almost every other thing he votes for, I'm against.
Yeah,
that's how desperate we are for people who have real leadership, who even despite the fact that we may disagree with them on many political issues, we're looking for somebody who has actual, not only tells the truth, is not scared to stand up for something he believes in, and is not scared to handle the political fallout should he lose. And that, you could do that in Kentucky and be a Democrat, you would be in office in Kentucky.
Oh, yes. The word is integrity. Just some fucking integrity. It's like, like who's the congressman that we have now who wants Mitch McConnell's seat? Andy Barr.
Oh, yeah.
That fucking guy.
He lives in your city.
There is no conviction with an Andy Barr. The only conviction that an Andy Barr has is that Andy Barr should be the congressman. That's it. And there is no other conviction.
He's gonna have Mitch's seat because they're running Amy McGrath against him again. If you guys remember Amy McGrath, look, just to set it up, Amy McGrath has run a couple times and she's losing. And I'm sure she's a nice lady, and she was, a pilot, a fighter pilot, and all the stuff that comes with that. And I applaud her service. She is not the person to run for a Senate seat, and she's just not. She's not articulate.
Let me tell you what the problem with Amy McGrath is, because I've seen her run 3 times. She's fucking lazy, and this is coming from Charles Lister. I know what lazy looks like. I love being lazy. Okay, but listen, if you want to be,
she's more lazy than we are.
What I'm telling you is, if you want to be in a leadership position, you got to hustle. You got to go to the fucking fish fry down at the Triple Rock and shake some hands. Amy McGrath, all she wants to do is go on a college campus and talk to the people who agree with her. That's it.
Yeah.
She's not willing to hustle. She's not willing to get out there and get on the stump and work. And there's kind of I don't know, I get the vibe from her as somebody who's in her region and has seen her speak. There's this vibe of I don't want to say entitlement, but I should get it because I should get it. And it's like, man, that does not inspire anybody. I mean, is
Kentucky.
She's fucking lost 3 elections now. 3 major elections. It used to be 3 strikes you're out, but I think she's going to get to do a 4th one. And the reason why is because nobody else will even stand for the fucking election.
It's very telling that they're not putting a lot of money into Kentucky.
Well, they know nobody can win. A lot of the a lot of the Democratic Party platform is so far to the left to the thinking of people in this region that it's just a non-starter. I mean, God, everything, Jeff, from positions on gun control, from positions on crime. I mean, the Democratic Party. There were serious people in the Democratic Party. Running around talking about defunding the police. I mean, these are not things that win elections. These are not hills to die on. These are for regular everyday folks. These are non-starters. And I keep hoping that the Democratic Party will get back to, I don't know, talking about something like, hey, how do we make it so that people's prescription medicines are cheaper? Not like don't go out talking about socialized medicine. Go out and say something increment. How can we make people's, what kind of plan could we implement that would help people with prescription medicines? What kind of plan could we implement that would, that would make incremental changes in the educational system and improve things? But they don't. They pick little niche issues that the majority of people don't care about, and so they lose elections over and over again.
We talked earlier about this today, about the importance of not only having integrity when you're running for office, but also having charisma. And you were recently at an event where charisma was sorely lacking.
It's so bad. I mean, let's see. I was looking at the four Democratic candidates for the congressional 6th district. There's one. Her name is Erin Petrie. She's running in the 6th district. She is so manic and so shrill in her conversational style. So I'm Erin Petrie, and I'm going to, like that. And it's like, and you're sitting there, and I saw people turn around looking at each other, going, hold on, take 2 steps back, don't make eye contact. I mean, that kind of thing. I mean, it was bad. And then the 2 male candidates were, I think the guy's name is Zach Dembo, and I forget the other candidate's name, because they're forgettable. I mean, the problem is like I'm sitting there and looking at these 2 guys, and they both look like 2 fucking guys who got bullied mercilessly in junior high, and nobody votes for that. They just don't. They look at the guy and they go, is this guy a fighter? Is this guy going to go up there and fight for something that I believe in? Can I trust that people will listen to this person? I mean, it's sad. And, I know, and listen, like, in fairness to this guy, Zach Dembo or whatever, articulate, smart, a career in public service, no question, he'd probably be an excellent public servant, but that's not the perception. You have to have both. You have to have somebody who's smart and who's capable, but also at the same time is convincing and has.
Well, that's what the Republicans seem to understand better than the Democrats do.
Oh God, do they ever?
Like,
Look,
you can say whatever you want about how you hate Pete Hegseth, and I hate Pete Hegseth, but he was hand chosen for a reason.
Absolutely.
Barrel chest, trying to do push-ups, looks okay in a suit, got that sort of Republican haircut. And you can go all the way up down the line and maybe exclude Stephen Miller from that. But like there are those in that party who definitely understand.
And Jeff, look at how they keep Stephen Miller under wraps. They're like, don't let Stephen get in front of a camera, please. Not anymore. Look, Donald J. Trump, you can trash him in 46 different ways. But Donald J. Trump can stand in front of thousands of people and ensorcel them. He can. And he is, to a certain demographic, incredibly charismatic.
We should qualify that with to a certain demographic.
To a certain demographic, the one that wins, Jeff.
Yeah,
the one that wins. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton figured it out, for Christ's fucking sake. Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar who attended Oxford, and he walks around and he talks to people, Jeff, and he says, "I feel your pain." Are you fucking kidding me? Do you think Bill Clinton talks like that in a policy meeting? Do you think he talked like, I mean, he gets it. He understands. I mean, Bill Clinton's one of the greatest speakers on the stump you'll ever see politically.
It's unbelievable. And I don't know if I told this story, but I was with him back in, I don't know, probably 1991 or something like that at the 92 probably at the White House. And there's a picture of me with him and all that kind of stuff. And I was a young guy, and I was very determined not to like him because as a journalist, I'm very determined not to like any of them. I try
good luck with that with Bill Clinton.
I try my best. And he did one of those kind of things that you do a better impression of than me. But, he walked in and I stuck my tape recorder in his face kind of thing and started asking him questions. And he just stuck out his hand and shook my hand and got right up in there. He's like, "Oh, what are you here for? And, you're nice to meet you and blah, blah, blah. And what do you want to talk to me about?" And, all this kind of stuff. And, he's the same guy who, when he's at a diner, the first thing he does is he walks right over to the plate of hamburger and French fries and helps himself to a French fry.
To your fries.
Yeah, your fucking fries. And then turns and takes one and he eats a bite of your burger. Get out a bite of that burger. And then he hands it back to the guy. And the guy's like happy that Bill split all his burger. And then he tells, "Hey, Jimmy, can you get me one of these fantastic burgers?" And he's 5-10 minutes in. And he hasn't asked him a single question about politics whatsoever. And he controls the whole fucking room. And we have lost the Democratic Party. There are none of, there are very few of them anymore.
There's nobody in the goddamn Democratic Party who's charismatic. Chuck Schumer, are you fucking kidding me? Meshuggah Schumer, Jesus, I mean that guy. It just goes on and on and on. I mean, the people in the Democratic Party who, it's like the American people. The old joke with W. Bush was, "I'd like to have a beer with that guy." You can disparage that and say that's shallow or what have you, but that's what wins elections.
Actually, anytime I've been around Bush, and I do not consider him a smart guy, I found him to be gentlemanly and polite and quite engaging for a guy that I thought was as dumb as he was. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no question he's not a bright guy, he's not like Clinton, but he's not bad. He's certainly better than. I mean, when it comes to commanding a room, Trump commands a room, but he commands a room of imbeciles. Because he surrounds himself with imbeciles. Bush could talk out of anybody, and even if you didn't like him, you probably still think he's an okay guy. You're not going to walk away thinking he's a prick. Whereas
Jeff,
Clinton,
if you set out to win an election, who do you think would be better to get votes from? Imbeciles or academics?
Well, it depends on how many people there are.
Well, no, seriously. I mean, what percentage of the population do you think are imbeciles? What percentage of the population do you think are smart?
Right.
What percentage of the population has a college degree? What is it? It's like 30%?
Yeah.
Something like that. What percentage of the population has an advanced degree? Now that's getting down into like the 15 or 20 percentile. You know, I mean, the average IQ in America is 100. 100. I mean, the Newsweek magazine is written on a 6th grade level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so the Democrats are very, they're very cerebral, they're very academic and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you need less college professors and you need more cab drivers.
I was asked
to win an election.
I was asked by somebody here to reintroduce you because they joined a little bit late. But this is my buddy Charles Lister. Charles Lister, just for you guys' knowledge, is one of my best friends since college. He was the editorial cartoonist. I'll put his cartoon up again. He did another one for us today. Every time he's on, and when we start doing our podcast, we're going to call it probably something like Two Guys Talking. He's going to do a cartoon every week, with maybe the news of the day or the news of the week. This is Charles's take on the royal visit. And Charles, when he was in college, was our editorial cartoonist, the paper I worked at, the college paper, and then went on to do all sorts of things, including starring in a couple of really bad horror movies. And he does set design. He's an artist, extraordinary artist, actually, and lives in Lexington, Kentucky, with his wife and a couple of little rugrats running around. And just the reason I have Charles on is because Charles and I have these conversations pretty frequently, where we just call each other and are either angry or laughing at things. And I just find them to be interesting conversations. And I find Charles to be one of those very smart, cerebral kind of guys that I like having in my circle of trust. So that's why Charles is here. And Charles, if he were having a podcast introducing me, he'd have to say, I remember him when all he did is stagger around and throw up and fall on the ground in college. But but I still like him, so he's my friend. That's probably what he has to say about me. But anyways,
the thing that I liked about you was in college when I met you, we bonded over Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah.
And I immediately met a kindred spirit who loved to read and loved to write and loved words and that sort of thing. And then after college, there was probably a 2 or 3 year period where I didn't hear from you or talk to you, but I heard that you had moved on to Campus USA. And then from there, you had become a
U magazine, yeah.
U magazine, that's what it was. Yeah. And you had become a war correspondent. And, I always had my ear to the ground with the Coconut Telegraph of former college students. And I would hear through the grapevine what you were up to. And you were in Bosnia and you were covering all of that. And I was hearing all these incredible stories. And I was like, my God, Jeff was dead serious. He was going to go out there and he was going to be a real journalist and a real war correspondent. And everything. And, you meet a lot of folks in college, and they'll have dreams in college and then they won't pursue them. And it's very rare. And then those were the people that I gravitated towards. When I was in school, one of the things that frustrated me about the academic experience was I was constantly being told by my professors that I needed to pick up a master's degree in art. And I was bewildered by this. I was like, why in the fuck would I want 3 more years of this? And they were like, well, if you don't get an MFA, you won't be able to teach. And I was like, I don't know how many times I have to say this. I have no intention of teaching. And they're like, well, then you will starve and you will die. And and I was like, well, what about the option of getting paid for making art? And they were like, oh, that's hilarious. Such a thing has never happened, in the history of the world. And
what did your grandfathers tell you when you your grandfathers?
Even worse. But what further pushed me away from them and made me persona non grata was the response of I'd look at them and I go, well, I think that's probably true of you, but I think I'll be fine. And, of course, they were like the arrogance and the stupidity of that, well, they were right. I did starve a great deal, but I also enjoyed some success too. But the first part of that is you've got to have the guts to go do it. And that was the thing and that's why I kept in touch with you. I was like, no, Jeff really ran out and became a reporter and became a war correspondent and actually did these things, that he talked about doing when I met him when he was young. And Jeff, that's incredibly rare.
I think it was just a giant colossal fear of failure. When you decide you want to do something and you tell the world you're going to do it, you're kind of like broadcasting your intentions. And if you don't go do it, then you're a fucking loser. And so I was scared of failing at that endeavor for fear that I would be judged by my friends and peers and family for failing. And it drove me that much harder. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but
no, I'm sure
that was part of the equation.
That makes sense. The other thing that I had going for me too was I couldn't do anything else.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's like, well, it's like, Charles, you're an artist, so we're going to have to make you an art teacher. I'm like, I can't be a fucking art teacher. They'll fire me in 2 days. They'll fire me from a cannon. That's not going to work. You can't put me in front of a bunch of fucking kids. That's insane. And so, I couldn't do anything else. And so I had to succeed. I had to make money from actually creating and doing things. I didn't have any choice. I've got a very close friend. You've met him, a guy named Jeff, and he and I, and Jeff is one of the few people that I went through college with that he went on and much like myself, he did things in the field of art, had no interest in teaching, Jeff has been wildly successful.
Yeah, his name's Jeff Coatney for the sake of separating Jeffs in the conversation here.
And Jeff's had this incredible career where he's worked in other countries and that sort of thing. And one of the things that he and I talk about all the time, we both feel like, and we know we're fugitives from the law of averages. We've done well for ourselves in spite of the fact that we made all the worst choices, you know. And and we talk about it, and we're like, and one of the things that Jeff says all the time, and he's so right, is he's like, fuck, Charles, I couldn't do anything else. I didn't have any choice. He's like I, it wasn't like I was going to be an accountant or going to dentistry.
Maybe you can give him a little bit of tease as to who Jeff Coatney is and was and the kind of projects he's done, because
goodness,
it sounds like we're just talking about a random person here.
Jeff was at EKU at the same time Jeff Newton and I were, and he was just a fireball of talent, just incredible. Could do anything. He did everything from acting to voiceover work to cartooning, illustration, painting, you name it. And he went on, and Jeff has a tremendous technical proficiency for technical drawing and that sort of thing. And where he found his niche was in theme parks. And one of the things that Jeff did that was really, really incredible was he was in a very high up art directing role in Disney's Galaxy's Edge, for Star Wars, and did a tremendous amount of work on that, in particular on the construction of the Millennium Falcon in that park. And which I was privileged to get to see just about 2 months ago. I took my youngest son down there, and Jeff went with us, and we got to look at his work and everything up close and in person. But yeah, he's worked on theme parks all over the world. He was in China for several years, working on a theme park for the Chinese government. That's really quite something, But yeah, and again, much like myself, one of the things that he and I have in common is we couldn't do anything else. Every time we tried to do anything, that a sane person would do, it just turned to shit. It's like there was no other alternative. So
you're like me.
Do you find that with you about writing? I mean, are you the kind of person? It's like, do you think Jeff Newton could be an accountant?
I can't even keep track of my fucking checkbook. Actually, I don't even have a checkbook. Holly has a checkbook with both our names on it. And when we have to pay bills with a check where I'm running into town or something, she fills it out and hands it to me. That's the extent of my understanding of my account. I have no understanding. I couldn't do anything other than the kinds of things that I do. And
could you imagine yourself as being trained to be a dental hygienist? Could you imagine yourself as, it's like every normal thing that a human being could do. There's not a fucking prayer of me doing that. I wouldn't last 6 minutes, So, that becomes part of it too. You're like, well, hell, I have to succeed, and this is the only damn thing I can do. I'm wired this way. So
what do you think are the big issues coming up in the next couple of weeks? You think we should be paying attention to? You sent me some stuff the other day that was really fascinating, and I have tendency to agree with when it comes to oil and how the oil market's going to shape up in the years to come. Based on some stuff you're reading into.
I think one of the exciting things. Look, I think we're in for a rough way to go over the next 2 or 3 years over this Iran war situation. And obviously we're still divided politically, and we can't get our head out of our ass in that sense. So we're going to be at each other's throats for the next couple of years, and I don't see a lot of compromise on anything. But one of the things that I see happening is I don't see the Middle East being the king of the hydrocarbons anymore. America is now. We now export more oil than the Middle East does. We're and one of the things that's about to happen that real money is flowing in down in Venezuela. There are incredible proven oil reserves down in Venezuela, and a lot of those wells were mothballed when Chavez came to power and the socialists took over. And Chevron is pouring in there right now, cutting all kinds of deals to start all that back up. Now, it'll take years to get all that online and pumping. But once it does, if the Middle East is still a shit show and you can't get a tanker out of the Middle East, well, if you're the world and you're looking for oil, you're coming here because of the security guarantees. I mean, we could get it to you. And we're flanked on either side geographically by two oceans, which opens us up to the east and the west in marketing. We're well positioned. So I think the future in 2 to 3 years is going to look pretty bright from America just because of our geographic positioning and the many blessings that we have from a standpoint of resources at our disposal. We may be the only country on earth that could be isolationist but please don't misunderstand me. I'm not advocating for that. I don't think isolationism is a good idea.
Well, we would be isolationist by mistake. Like we would be essentially starting war with Iran, creating our own isolationism,
right,
and benefiting from it without us calculating that into the equation.
That's exactly right. And also I think Canada's going to stand to benefit from all of this.
Canada, I think they are too. Their deals they're cutting right now are phenomenal.
Absolutely. Well, aren't they? I think they're throwing money at that at a large pipeline that's going to get a lot of the oil sands oil out of Canada and into markets.
And it's going to go to Asia.
Yeah. So I mean, again, we're in for a rough road from a standpoint of the spike in oil prices and how that's going to have downwind effects on everything from, my God, cellophane to tennis shoes, and we're going to see real inflation. But that doesn't mean that's the way the world is realigning as we speak. Big tectonic plates are shifting, and I think I don't see Russia being around much longer. They've got such a problem with their demographics, and I think I don't think China. I think China is so overhyped. China's got incredible demographic issues. They've got whole cities in China with no people in them.
Yeah, well, they built whole cities in China that nobody bought the apartments, and we did that story on 60 Minutes 10 years ago.
Now, did you get into the deep dive about how the reason
it was a Leslie Stahl piece? Yeah, Leslie Stahl did it. She went over there and walked around and saw these empty cities. Yeah.
Well, but the thing is like when I believe it was Leslie Stahl's piece that I saw, but that set me thinking. I was like, why in the world would they have done such a thing? And what I landed on was their markets and their economy is so corrupt that the Chinese people believed that the only place that they could put their money was in real estate. And as a consequence, they started buying second and third homes, like as investment properties. And they bought them by the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And before you know it, they had created entire cities where no human was ever going to live.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a statistic not too long ago that said you could put the population of France in the empty housing that there is available right now in China. I mean, that's true, that's astonishing.
Now, there's some good comments here from Donna Collum. Donna says the price has to stay very high to make the oil sands profitable because it's so costly to get the in the ground and costly to produce and process dirty stuff. Yeah, that's true.
That's
so
true.
At least
that is so true, Donna. But I would also say that if you take 20% of the oil off of the market for any extended period of time, that oil sand starts looking real attractive.
And you know what? That's just like there are probably oil fields in Canada that have never been discovered yet.
I'm sure.
And just like in Alaska, or that they've just not mined. And I think Canada's turning much more into a country that's much more inclined to go, we want to live and stand on our own. We're going to find our resources now, and we're going to figure out a way to get them out of the ground. And it's maybe not the most left-leaning ideology, but Mark Carney's not fucking around. And, he's going to start bringing that country forward so they don't have to depend on U.S. commerce anymore and U.S. Military anymore. Europe is changing in such a way that they want to build all their own weapon systems now. And I actually disagree with you on the point we were making earlier in the commentary, which was I don't believe that the Europeans need America as much as they think they do. And here's my thought as to why. Their main foe is Russia, and Russia is showing that they cannot handle Ukraine. Yeah. And if you had 30 European countries that had another 10 years of lead time, maybe 10 to 12 years lead time, they could start buying their weapons and creating their weapons from themselves, and they could muster. They'd spend more money, but they would muster up enough armies within sort of another NATO structure where they wouldn't have to bother with us anymore. And I really
agree with you. But I think the Germans are going to need about 2 to 3 years of runway to do that, and they're already doing it as we speak. They're retooling Volkswagen factories over there as we speak for weapons systems, and they're going to be building drones. And one of their chief clients is going to be Israel, for drone manufacturing. But Germany, the whole history of Germany is how radically fast those people can rearm when they decide to. Probably 3 to 4 years from now, Germany's going to be a very serious arms manufacturer. And you're right, they won't need America anymore.
And you also have Sweden, with Saab creating great weapon systems. You're probably going to see that in France with Mirage and similar platforms. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing Europe; they're walking away from our version of the AWACS aircraft, because they're like $500 million for a outdated old airframe that we can make ourselves over here and sell to each other. Sure. I mean, I think Trump has forced the hand of Europe to his detriment. And we're looking at hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of years of arms sales that are going to be walking away from American military industrial complex.
That's absolutely.
And I think it's going to be really horrible for the United States military industrial complex, because those weapon systems, those companies need those extra sales. Right. And I can't see us giving these guys 40% increase in military spending. We can't afford it. What Hegseth's asking.
Fortunately, the United States of America, weapon systems are not our only way to make bread and butter.
Yeah,
we're really blessed in this country. We can, it's not just, we don't just arm the world, we feed the world. You gotta keep in mind, and also from a standpoint of what we have in the way of mining resources in this country, untapped mining potential. I mean, the Carolinas are a gold mine of lithium. It's just not been extracted yet. I mean, and lithium is going to be the future of battery technology all over the world as we transition away from hydrocarbons. America is blessed in so many different dimensions, that we will probably be just fine, but the world is certainly realigning in a way that we've not seen in 80 years. We're in a different place now.
Yeah, we have Vaughn saying, keep in mind climate change, renewables and clean energy are the future, not fossil fuel. I mean, I think you're right on that. I mean, if we want to be energy independent, which we are not, we keep saying we are, but we're not. But we do need to have solar and wind to help augment our energy costs. And then Richard down here says he'll be buying all the defense equipment that the USA produces. And the answer is we'll be having to find new markets for it. We'll still be selling it to places like Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Jordan, Kuwait, but it still would take a huge chunk out of the market if places like Poland and Germany and et cetera. We're not buying U.S. weapon systems. Those Patriot systems that are seen, in a lot of different NATO countries would not be being bought by European countries. You have many different types of airframes that we sell, older versions of them, but we sell in that part of the world. Which, in fact, many of which are going to be used in Ukraine right now. You have 16s, and you have Polish weapons. Polish country Poland buying U.S. weapon systems. You have all sorts of missile systems that they utilize, and those kind of things are just they're gonna be hurt in their arms sales. And our goal is to quadruple our weapons manufacturing in the next 3 to 5 years, something like that. Hegseth wants to quadruple it. And the only people going to be buying that stuff is Americans. Imagine what we're going to be paying for weapon systems if we quadruple our arms production. It's right now we're $1 trillion a year, and he wants to get to 1.5 trillion. It's a preposterous number, and we just don't have the money to pay for all that stuff, and it's really going to hurt the U.S. arms industry. I always got questions.
Just in case you want to start reading some questions.
Oh yeah,
down below this.
Yeah, sorry, I'm reading stuff off my page, and she's writing some of them down.
I could read.
Yeah, Deborah says we better start building some refineries. We're already at refining capacity. Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
Right on the money. What does this one say? Sure, I can't read that. My wife's handwriting is
I'm sorry, it's
beyond
worse
me.
than a doctor.
Yeah.
Sure, we export a lot, but what about our reserves?
Well, we're depleting right now our reserves because we're trying to keep the price of oil in some reasonable amount of check. And the Republicans have had several opportunities to replenish the strategic petroleum reserve and have passed on it, thinking it was useless and not needed. So, and that's the truth. And they can say whatever they want, but they cut it out of their budgets. So that's where we're at. And it would take, half a decade to replenish them if we started today. So there's
going to be some real economic pain over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough.
Let's see, even more resource wars and migrations because of it. Yep. Things, it was NATO allies buying those systems. The thing is, it was NATO. That's true. NATO, and I think NATO is going to start moving away from buying U.S. systems. They really are. I mean, what NATO needs without an America is weapon systems that are what they call NATO systems. When you're fighting overseas, they have NATO rounds, 7.62 millimeter rounds that all NATO countries there can utilize, right? Or we'll have the M4 rifle with the 5.56 rounds. I mean, those are NATO systems. And so those kinds of weapon systems would just lose the American component of that. And they would start importing and creating more weapon systems that were NATO weapon systems, but would be utilized by those countries minus the United States. It would be a real shocker to the U.S. economy. Let's see. It has been predicted the Earth will have the hottest year ever this year. We could go past 1.5 degrees. Man, you're not kidding. And, I'm not a big anecdotal guy when it comes to this shit, but up where we live in Highland County, Virginia, people keep talking about how the season's getting shorter and shorter and shorter for these ski resorts around us. And, I keep my eye on that kind of stuff. In Canada, it's like, how long is the outdoor ice rink season? And it's becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. And here where I live, it's the ski season. And that's not, I don't care as it relates to skis or ice hockey. I care because that's literally a barometer for how the climate is changing. And it's scary. Now we happen to live at 2,200 feet up here in Highland County, Virginia. We don't even need air conditioning, but the rest of the country is going to start heating up to the point where, energy costs are going to skyrocket, both trying to keep your place warm in the wintertime and cool in the summer. You're going to have a lot of problems with climate change. And we have an administration that won't acknowledge it, won't even allow, they don't even want to allow people to have windmills or solar because it benefits the U.S. petroleum industry. Let's see. Brad says Trump gave the world the kick in the pants we needed to get our shit together, figure out new pathways for the international trade and work together. The only thing we can thank him for, that's Canada. Canada had all our eggs in one basket. Yep, you're right about that, Brad. No argument with me here. I'm glad. And I'm glad that at a time when he did that, we had Mark Carney who could step up and do this job. I mean, he's really turning out to be, unless you live in, Alberta and you're a hardcore conservative that lives in Alberta, most of the rest of the country feels like he's doing a pretty good job. And I'm one of those believers. I believe. And by the way, the rest of the world believes it too after his Davos discussions. And I think it was Davos speech. Or was it the G7? Anyway, I think it was Davos. I mean, this is a guy who's, ready for prime time and people are willing to follow him. And imagine that Europe is willing to follow a Canadian across another ocean with what he's talking about in terms of diversification of economies of scale and the U.S. and military spending and military resources, shared military resources. Let's see. I'm just going to look at you. I'm going to take one from Holly. You got another one over there? Because I'm trying to get some Facebook and some Substack. I don't like to neglect my Substack people, but all I'm seeing is Facebook and she sees the Substack.
Yeah. So Deborah
sorry, people, don't get mad at me.
A lot of these are comments more than questions. Trump has captured the military industrial complex, a large percentage of it, at least. They're going to make bank.
Well, I mean, he's going to make. What do you think about that? He's going to make bank on everything. His kids are jumping into military contracts,
Absolutely.
and apparently no more conflicts of interest anymore in the U.S. government.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, listen, 'twas ever thus. I mean, man, go back and look at the Bush family and how much money they made, and look at their cozy relationships with Halliburton and all of that. I mean, it's how it works. It's awful, but it's how it works.
But we have to admit that this is at a level that we've never seen in our lifetime. I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah,
because there's not even any discussions about it being unethical anymore.
Right. Well,
I mean,
wait a minute. Okay, yeah, it's unlike what we've seen in our lifetime, but it's not unprecedented. I mean, if you go back to the 1880s and you look at the robber baron era, the post-Civil War era, and you look at the goddamn, the kind of things that were going on. I mean, today is tame by comparison. I mean, we've been here before. We've survived it. And then, toward the end of the 19th century, you get Teddy Roosevelt and you get the progressives coming in, and fighting it back. The pendulum swings in American history, and we're swinging wide right now, but I personally believe it will swing back. It will,
Yeah.
America's, we're, many things are stacked in our favor, geographically, demographically, economically, resource wise. It goes on and on and on. We'd have to work pretty hard to fuck ourselves, out of a brighter future. Now, there have been times in our history where we have 1861 to 65 comes to mind, things like that, but for the most part, we do a pretty good job of reining it in before it goes off the rails. I was born in 1968, and if you go back, people say all the time, they go, well, Donald Trump's the worst president I've seen in my lifetime. And I look at him and I go, well, he's not the worst president I've seen in my lifetime. And they go, who do you mean? And I go, well, when I was a kid, we had Richard Nixon, and Richard Nixon was every bit as corrupt and as venal as Donald Trump, except Richard Nixon was competent. Truly dangerous.
I mean, I've heard this argument different times with different people in the past, and you and I were kids when he was around. I don't think that you would see the same. Like, Richard Nixon was basically, forced from office because he lied about a break-in. Do you know what I mean? Like, that it was one pretty much a series of events that kind of was one event that stretched itself out, and he covered it up. And back then, it mattered. The cover up mattered.
Yeah, but Richard Nixon, we now know, colluded with Henry Kissinger to thwart the peace talks in Paris, prolonging the Vietnam War by 2 years. Richard Nixon authored a secret covert war in Cambodia that nobody even knew anything about, complete with B-52 bombers. I mean, it goes on and on and on, the kind of malfeasance that he and Kissinger were war criminals.
And he had McNamara as the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, Donald Trump he's a boob. He's a carnival barker. He's a huckster. He's not a I don't know. Well, maybe he's branching out. Maybe with Iran, he will reach war criminal status. He certainly thumped the
dancing around the border of it now, pretty handily.
Yeah, he's talking about going after infrastructure in Iran, bombing bridges, doing things like that, which by anybody's, by any humanitarian standard would be a truly evil thing to do. And talking about how he plans to erase their civilization. I don't know how much of that shit is bluster and how much of it is real, but I know with Richard Nixon, it was real.
Richard Carter jumps in here to debate you on this topic, and it's hard because it's a one-way conversation. But he says, "No comparison to Nixon and Trump, Charles. What on earth are you talking about? We like you, Richard, because this is how Charles and I debate things when there's not 200 other people watching."
Can I chime in?
Right.
Yeah, Holly can chime in too, but we appreciate that comment. I'm going to let him respond to it briefly. But what do you?
Someone else on Substack pointed out that Nixon wasn't trying to be a dictator.
That's true. He wasn't trying to be a dictator. I mean, you got some good counterpoints there, Chuck.
Yeah, I don't think he had to try to be a dictator. He was. I mean, he was getting away with things that dictators get away with, without the bluster. Come on, guys. Bombing Cambodia with, prolonging the Vietnam War. There's probably 7,000 American soldiers' names on that black scar of a memorial in Washington, D.C. that wouldn't be there had Nixon and Kissinger, been honest brokers of peace in Paris. There's real malfeasance with it. Look, I guess what it comes down to, here's what I'll say.
You're gonna get hammered too. You finish that thought.
Okay, let him hammer me. That's fine. I can take it. But what I'll say about this is, if I'm going to deal with somebody who is dangerous, I'd rather deal with an idiot who's dangerous. And that's what Donald Trump is. Donald Trump's not particularly competent. Donald Trump is more like a carnival barker. Richard Nixon was a serious man, and he was a dangerous man, and he was an amoral and venal man. And that's why I always saw him as a greater threat and a worse president.
And then you have Izzy coming in here. Izzy says, Izzy Valdez, I think my glasses it's small print. Izzy Valdez coming in and said, are you forgetting that Trump is convicted of so many different things, especially being, well, he wasn't convicted of being a pedophile, Izzy. He was actually convicted of a civil crime against E. Jean Carroll of sexual assault. What the hell? That is the worst ever. And that's not exactly, and that was at a time when he was not president, many years before he was president. So in terms of comparing those things, I mean, the guy is a fucking lunatic, and he's a sexual assaulter, and he's most likely involved in the Epstein files as a pedophile, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, but that's another can of peas. God damn, if they can ever kick over that rock, and we can figure out what the hell, what he was involved in with the Epstein files. Yeah, maybe that can certainly force a reconsideration on my part.
Richard Carter comes in again and says, at least Nixon resigned. You think Trump's going to go away willingly? No, I think we can all agree, Richard, myself and Charles and you, that he's not going to go away willingly. We're going to have to strap him in a trench coat and wrap it up with duct tape and drag him out of there. And Mr. President, I'm not suggesting we do that. And I'm promised not to put any seashells on the coast suggesting so. Julie Wood says close enough as it relates to his sexual pedophilia and sexual assault.
They're coming in faster.
Yeah, they're coming in faster. That's what. So this is the good part. You get to see, like, when Charles and I really start debating stuff.
It's far more dangerous. JMO says, Charles, with respect, I think you speak from a place of privilege.
You've been accused of being in a place of privilege, Charles.
Well,
I don't know if you know Charles' background, but it certainly wasn't privilege.
I certainly hope I'm speaking from a place of privilege. I've always aspired to that.
Don't let the background and the books on the wall fool you. He came up the hard way. He grew up with his grandparents. I think I just think it's interesting because these comparisons between these two horrible presidents of which one's the worst is always a great debate. I personally, Charles, think Trump is far worse. Listen,
I'll grant you that he's dumber. He's an ogre. That it goes on and on and on. Probably, quite possibly a pedophile. God help us. The kind of things that Nixon did from a standpoint of war crimes and that sort of thing in Southeast Asia, and authoring the deaths of look at what happened in Cambodia under Pol Pot and the killing fields and the millions of people who died there. I mean, these are very serious things.
Yeah. Another question for Charles. You're getting peppered here.
Charles, do you have any pets?
I don't. I have a wife. I have a wife that's immunocompromised, and so we can't have pets, unfortunately.
Okay.
The boys, we have two sons, and it sure would be great if we could have a dog or something like that. That would be awesome.
Yeah, and your sons, you make them shower and everything, just like if they were a pet. Keep them as clean as possible.
We have to. Yeah. Actually, my wife's not immunocompromised. She's immunosuppressed because of her condition. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and boy, I'll tell you, COVID was a nightmare because of that.
Yeah. And well, and without going into too much detail because it's private, you do have a very good understanding of how fucked up our healthcare system is.
Oh, firsthand, firsthand.
Yeah.
But I also have a very, here's the thing, because of my wife's cancer and because of what we went through over the last 10 years with a bone marrow transplant and all of that, I not only understand how fucked up the American healthcare system is, but at the same time, I understand how great the American healthcare system is. I mean,
In the sense of the ability to cure
and
cure
the
problems.
ability to cure disease and the ability to fight, and and cure disease. I mean, we have an incredible research and university medical system edifice in this country that shouldn't be taken for granted. I mean, and one of the things that, again, sure, you can say my privilege showing, or whatever, but one of the things that you have to think of when you want to tinker with something as complex as the medical system is, okay, let's say you make an incremental gain here, but what will that cost you? Will that undermine, and I've had doctors sit across and explain this to me, because I've had arguments and conversations with doctors about this and nurses. It's a very complex system, and the lion's share of the problem that I see with the American medical system have more to do with the insurance side of it than
Yeah, I
they
was going to
do.
have you touch on that. Like, there's two separate things. There's how good
Right.
are we at curing disease, and then how bad are we at not paying for curing disease?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
you can tell some pretty serious stories about how many days a week your wife spends on the phone to try to make sure she stays alive, and how
Exactly.
you have
And
to.
negotiating costs with insurance companies. It's literally a full-time job, and that's the downside of the American medical system, is the tremendous difficulty that there is, with the economic side of things. But from a standpoint of what America brings to the table, uh, from a standpoint of when your fat gets in the fire with a serious disease or a terrible accident, and what can be done for you by trauma surgeons or oncologists in the American medical system, there's no equal to it anywhere on earth. There is no place else where that's better. And
Yeah.
and the problem is the financial hurdle, and how do we get that to the most Americans that we can,
Well,
and
and
that
Charles,
is a
and
very
Charles,
complex problem, you know.
Charles, when you talk about that, how much time and energy does it also take from you when you're fighting a disease like this, when you have to spend all your time arguing day and night with these people who are
Well, I'll tell
always
you, Jeff, there
questioning
are people
you?
who can't do it and they die.
Yeah. And
You
the
know,
interesting thing is your wife, was one of those advocates before she got sick. She was one
that's
of those
right.
people who, yeah, her job was that, advocating for sick cancer people,
My, my,
kids.
my wife has worked her entire life in the nonprofit space as a fundraiser and an executive director for nonprofits, and she was involved with that before she got sick, and then the irony was that she fell prey to that as well. And here's an anecdotal story about that situation that's kind of interesting to people. Like you were talking about people who are fighting with insurance companies. It's more than that too. There's also, like, here's something to think about. My wife takes, I think, 33 medicines a day as a bone marrow transplant patient, and those medicines are not the same pills every day. They're they're spaced out. Like, she will take two in the morning, and then this one is every other day, and then this one has to be every third day, and this one. And so
Jesus.
she has these elaborate spreadsheets, and alarms on her phone that tells her when to take medicine. She was at the hospital one day, and and she was talking with her nurse, and the nurse was inputting some data about her vitals. And my wife mentioned to the nurse, she said, I was the executive director of a major charity for years. And she said, and I find doing the spreadsheets for my medications, incredibly challenging. And she goes, and I often wonder how somebody with only a high school education or somebody who's single and suffering from an illness manages to do all this. Now, the nurse that she's talking to is inputting data at the time. And she's kind of absentmindedly, and the nurse forgets herself for a second. And she responds to my wife and says, "Oh, honey, they don't, they die."
Hmm.
And then the nurse catches herself. And she realized,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that sounded crass. I didn't mean to say it like, and no, my wife goes, no, I understand. She goes, and the nurse goes, no, she goes, and then, so you can take a step back from that. You can take a step back from that story and you can ask yourself the question, okay, so what could we do to prevent that? I mean, that is a social problem that is huge. Let's say you've got somebody who's contracted cancer and they're in the same fix as my wife and they're single or they don't have any children or they're alone or whatever. You know, we have a lot of charitable organizations and nonprofits in America that try to step in and fill that gap for folks and to help people and do outreach to help folks like that. Uh, how big should the government's role be? How much money should be appropriated and earmarked for that kind of work? Because when you start doing a deep dive into what it would actually cost to make sure that everybody has access to health care, these are staggering numbers. And
Well,
America may have to make the choice that they can no longer be the world's cop if they want to do that sort of thing.
Charles, it's interesting that you say that. You know, um, in contrast to in Canada, where my family is from, my mom, and I don't know how much we've talked about this before, actually. My mom and her partner both got cancer simultaneously. He had throat cancer, and my mom had breast cancer, and she was in her 80s, and he's younger than her. And they caught his late because he wouldn't go to the fucking doctor. He smoked his whole life and drank too much his whole life. Then he got throat cancer. And by the time he decided that tickle in his throat about a year and a half later wasn't just a tickle anymore, he went in. My mom finally forced him to go in, and he had stage 4 esophageal cancer in his throat. And they immediately got him in. So this is for Americans listening and Canadians listening too. This is a really great contrast between two systems. They got him in really quickly and operated. They had to take out all of his voice box, everything. It was really horrible. But then they also got him on immunotherapy, which at the time he wouldn't have qualified for in the United States. They just give it a denial. It's experimental, and now it's becoming much more prevalent. But at the time, because he was in Canada, he got these immunotherapy treatments, and it elongated. He was supposed to live like 4 months. He ended up living like 7 years, and and eventually succumbing to it. And it was tough. It was hard on him, but it had caught it earlier and gone into the doctor when he was supposed to, he'd probably still be alive. And on my mother's side, with breast cancer, she went in and had her operation, and she was home like that day and was in the tomato garden the next morning making the garden clean of weeds and weeding the garden. And what struck me about this whole thing and the contrast between that and the US system, and I hear so much about the Canadian system and how it lacks and all this kind of stuff, it's usually from Canadians who think it lacks because they're in the Canadian system but haven't experienced the American system yet. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's from the Americans who listen to the propagandizing that like people like Rand Paul do, who on the one hand says the Canadian system sucks and we don't want it, and simultaneously went up to Canada to have his hernia operation and try to do it quietly and have nobody know about it. So that's the kind of hypocrisy that I fucking hate. But anyways, my mom and her husband went through this stuff, and at the same time, they both lived. My mom lived another 10 years until she died, 89 years old of old age. And, I think the lesson for me was not the healthcare and how good it was, because I thought it was quite good. The lesson to me was how they didn't have to drain their life savings or stress every day about losing their coverage. Right. Or stress every day about not getting something done because it's being denied by their insurance carrier. Right. And for me, that was really an eye-opening experience.
So because Jeff, let me ask you this, because I don't know the answer to this question. What is the effective tax rate in Canada?
I mean, Mark Carney's coming out with new numbers now. that essentially says the effective tax rate after everything is said and done is slightly less than here in the United States. But I don't think that number's right.
So the numbers that I've heard, the effective tax rate in the United States, the state, local income tax, et cetera, falls around 33% on most Americans, is what the numbers I've heard. Are we in agreement on that, or?
Sure, that's roughly,
Okay.
yeah. If you add,
But my understanding is that Canadian income tax is north of that, more pushing up more toward 40-45%.
I don't know if it's 45%, but I wouldn't say 40%. That's probably too far off.
Let's say it's 5. Let's say it's 5% higher than the United States. Can you sell that and win an election?
If it's what, 5% higher?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can.
If you tell people, listen, I want to fix the American healthcare system. Here's what I'm going to level with you. Here's what it's going to take to do it. You're paying an effective income tax rate right now of 33%, and next year you're going to pay 38%. That's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take. Vote for me. Would Americans vote for it?
I don't know if that's a fair number, and I'll tell you why. Because I think you're assuming that 8% difference or whatever it is in Canadian and American taxes is just a healthcare cost, whereas really it's a lot of other social programs that are wrapped into it.
Sure.
Education's that's not as expensive as it is here, et cetera, et cetera. And and I think like you would find here, for instance, doctors get paid a fortune compared to doctors in Canada, and your medical costs as it relates to prescriptions, for instance, is a fraction in Canada of what you pay here. So I think it's not necessarily a fair comparison. What I would say is you don't sell the number. You sell the idea that you're no longer going to have to fight with your insurance companies anymore. And how much is that worth to you? And you're no longer going to have to worry about being denied.
I understand that, and I agree with that tactic.
Coverage.
I agree with that tactic, but your opponent, your political opponent, is going to talk about the number.
Yeah, and they do already. I mean, in Canada, they do have conservatives that talk about how they want to get rid of. They want to privatize the healthcare system up in Canada, but it's one of
at the end of the day, the only way that you can affect change is by winning the election.
Yeah. You're trying to come full circle on me, Charles.
Huh?
You're trying to come full circle on me.
Well, it's a problem. It's like everybody wants to talk about these social problems, and they want to talk about, hey, we just need to do this, and then when you start talking to them about, well, it's going to cost X. All of a sudden everybody's turning their pockets out going, well, no, I'm not interested in that. And they don't show up when it comes time to fucking vote.
Yeah, I think Americans are really misinformed about what a single payer or a government healthcare system could look like. And it looks like in a lot. We had some Norwegian kids here the other day, 2 days ago for I'm on some group called the Nordic Press Center, where kids from Norway come and they come here to the Nordic Press Center in Washington, D.C. And now they come out here and stay a couple days with us and visit. We talk about journalism and all that kind of stuff and how it operates in Norway and all this. And when you talk about social benefits to people in European countries, they kind of look at you like really strange when you say like, aren't you worried about losing this or that? They kind of look at you like, what? No, why would I lose that? Right. Because it's just an inconceivable idea that they would lose their health care or government funding for certain things. It's just not. It doesn't make any sense to them. They would never do that. Whereas here we are always in a constant battle.
You look at people in Norway, and you look at what the Norwegian government is spending on defense, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't spend that much on defense because they're a NATO member, and we've got Uncle Sam's big green machine parked in their backyard. Meanwhile, America's blowing a shit ton of money on defense, being the cop of the world, but we don't have social programs in this country.
Yeah. I mean, I think we need to find a better balance in the United States between, spending as much as the top 10 countries behind us, you add up the top 10 countries behind us, and that's what we spend in defense. I don't think that's smart balance anymore. And I think that
I don't think so either. And I don't think the American people think it's a smart balance. And I think that's one of the reasons why MAGA Republicans keep winning. They're done with it. Now, the fact, though, that Donald Trump has just gone over there and put his dick in the mashed potatoes of Iran, it seems to be flying in the face of what his base voted for. That's going to really cost him.
His base didn't vote for a fucking wall. His base voted for a wall, right? It was going to cost $29 billion. His base definitely did not vote for a $400 million fucking ballroom. His base His base didn't vote for war with Venezuela at a couple
right
somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 to $20 billion. He didn't.
Yep.
They didn't vote for a war in Iran. They didn't vote for. I mean, any of this shit.
And that's the big one, Jeff. That's the big one. The war in Iran. I mean, like I you know what I'm steeped in down here in Lexington. You know, I'm surrounded by MAGA Republicans. I talk to them all the time, and they're mad as hell about that. You know, so maybe that's a tipping point. We'll see. You know,
the polls are saying no. The polls are saying those MAGA people are hanging on no matter what. They just flip their positions. Okay. They're like an Afghan warrior during the years of this Russian invasion. They would fight with
in the year 2016. The polls told me Hillary Clinton couldn't lose.
Yeah, by 21%, right?
Yeah. So you know, the polls haven't been. You know, I'm like I say, this is anecdotal. You know, but I actually have conversations with MAGA Republicans, and they are fucking pissed. Yeah. They are not happy about Iran, and they are really pissed. And here's what's really big down here in Kentucky. A lot of farmers who are buying diesel fuel.
Oh yeah, that's correct.
In Kentucky right now is north of $5 a gallon, and they're mad as hell. And the tariffs, which fucked Kentucky farmers on soybeans, and also screwed them completely on bourbon.
Yeah, and beef.
So there's I don't know. I'm really intrigued to see what happens comes November.
Well, I think that's why they're trying to change all these congressional districts.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely, Jeff. Absolutely. They're going to do anything that they can to hold on. You know, that's what you do. That's how you win, you know.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they're up to. You know.
Yeah.
You know, why play honest?
Yeah.
You know,
I think right now we just went over the 2-hour mark for our live.
Oh,
and we still have quite a few people online, but I think we're going to let you guys go. Charles and I keep talking about this, and you guys let us know what you think. But we really want to start a separate podcast that's separate from the Writers Cabin. It's just called Two Guys Talking, and we're working it out, and the stuff that works, the stuff that doesn't work. And we want to know what you guys think of it. So leave some comments on the page, on whatever page you're on. Let us know. And we'll dig in. We'll promise you a weekly cartoon from Charles. And
thanks so much for people who listen. Thanks so much for the comments, the people who wrote in and everything like that. I really appreciate it. And I'll caveat everything that I've said, from Nixon to economics and everything else. I'm a fucking cartoonist. Don't take what I say too seriously. You know,
cartoonists are some of the most well-read guys. That's why they are so influential on opinion pages throughout America, because they're really well-read and smart. And you are an example of that. So, somebody said outstanding, 2 hours more. You guys, the fact that anybody can sit through 2 hours of our drivel, Charles, is hilarious to both of us.
No kidding. Yeah.
Mike McIntyre has really wanted to come on and talk to you guys.
Oh shit!
He's been in on this a lot. I know. I just didn't want to interrupt. You guys kept going and going.
Okay, here's what we're going to make a promise.
Mike, we're going to get you on.
Next, we're going to do, Mike. I'll make you a promise. Holly's going to make a note of it. And next time, we're going to get you and 5 people on to ask questions. I promise. That's a promise. I keep my promises. And so Charles and I will probably have one more on from the Writers Cabin. Then we're going to do a separate. We'll break it out into Two Guys Talking.
So anyone else that wants to come on, message
Holly. How do they message you?
Message from the Writers Cabin on Substack.
Yeah, message from the Writers Cabin on Substack. And if you're not on there, just get a free subscription for now and message Holly on it. So you guys take care and listen. Like, follow, and share, and comment on the stuff. And if you like what we're doing on our Substack, come on over and get on subscriptions and hook a brother up, because I got 2 dogs to feed over here. I do have a dog, 2 dogs, and a cat. And here we'll do our, Charles shows the cartoons. I show Georgie. Come on, Georgie.
Jeanette says she's been on because she doesn't have a life, but I'd say this is a life.
Yeah.
Hey.
This is life. This is the new world we're in. Right, Georgie? Here's a kiss. Oh, yeah, it's a good boy.
Here's a good looking dog.
Exciting he is. He's so excited. Say hi, Georgie. Oh, there he comes. Yeah. Oh, boy. There he is. He wants to sit in Daddy's lap.
Hi, buddy.
All right. He's like,
go I'm getting kisses.
Yeah, Holly's getting kisses. All right, guys, like, follow, and share, and we'll see you soon. I'll back with some news tomorrow, and hope you guys. We've done 3 lives this week, so we did one Sunday, Monday, and now today. So I think our lives are probably. We'll still have our Sunday fireside, right, George? We'll still have
It was so good to be with you. It was good to see you guys again. Thanks for everybody who tuned in. It was a good time. I enjoyed myself. And
all right, man.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. Love you, man. Talk to you soon.
Take care,
Good night, everybody.
Good night.